14. So we'll do 1. We'll skip over a little bit and then pick up again in 7. But we'll cover what was picked up. On the Sabbath, when Jesus went to eat at the house of a prominent Pharisee, he was being carefully watched. Now, when he noticed the guests picking their places of honor at the table, he told them this parable. When someone invites you to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for a person more distinguished than you may have been invited. If so, the host might have to come up to you and say, give this person your seat. Then, humiliated, you'll have to go and move and come to where the host has placed you. But it's much better that you take a lower spot and the host comes to you and say, friend, move up to a better place. There you will be honored in the presence of all the other guests. For all those who exalted themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Then Jesus said to his host, when you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends and your brothers and sisters, your relatives, or your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back and you will be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind, and you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. This is the word of God for the people of God. By now, Jesus is attracting a very large crowd. And it doesn't go unnoticed by the Pharisees, who are the keepers of the law, the more fastidious of the religious leaders. Now, inviting to a Sabbath meal is what they were saying, and by a prominent Pharisee. One thing that one scholar mentioned, Old Testament scholar, said that chances are that this was a breakfast, only, or what we would call breakfast or a brunch, only because it is now the Sabbath, which started at midnight, or sunset. And so therefore, cooking was not allowed on the Sabbath, one of the many little laws. So chances are it was a cold meal, but they did eat very well. Even if you were of little means, your biggest meal was your Sabbath meal. Even if it was cold, you would have all your fruits, dates, all kinds of things, bread that was already baked, and so on. Yes, they ate bountifully, but you can pretty much assume that the leaders and the Pharisees ate quite a bit more. Although food was cold, they were pretty meticulous about how it was set up. According to their laws and very meticulous laws about what you do on the Sabbath and what's right and what's wrong, Jesus has talked about it many times. They were worried more about how it looked. I mean, it's not just any family gathering. This was something big. And they invited Jesus too. And it said they watched him. Now, it wasn't because Jesus was a loved one, but he was getting large crowds. And he was kind of making them not look so good. So let's get this guy in a little closer. And because of all the detailed customs, especially at a Sabbath meal, they wanted to see what Jesus would do. Hospitality was also a hallmark of their culture, but it was also greatly influenced by their own laws that they made and created. And by Jesus' time, we would say we started with 10 commandments, and by Jesus' time, they said there was over 600 laws to keep. I don't know about you. I have 10 fingers, and not 600. So if I need to keep track, that's hard. But it was also greatly influenced by the secular culture, especially the Greeks that came in, then the Romans, and you're always living under Roman imperialism where everything has a very specific hierarchy. So that's how that dinner goes. And the missing verses of 2 through 6, and I'm not sure why we didn't read them. One of the other people that were invited, probably an unlikely invite also, was a man what we now call dropsy, but he had deformed or swollen arms and maybe other limbs. Why was he invited? You know, if he was probably going to be at the end table or maybe even out in the hallway, or his Thanksgiving dinners, we always used to disdain being put at the kids' table because there just wasn't enough room at all the tables we had. Now, they knew that Jesus healed. That Jesus had compassion and mercy, that just the minute he saw you and saw your pain, he would do something about it. And yet, in all their laws, they thought healing was work and that was something that you just didn't do on the Sabbath. At least that was their view of it. And they wanted to see what Jesus would do. And Jesus healed it right in front of everybody. What a faux pas. What a social, you can't do that on Sunday. And Jesus knew their concerns, and he sat there and turned their very own laws against them because they were more worried about some of the things that they owned and had and appeared than they were at people. So they almost made concessions about letting your going in, oh, your child fell in a well. Oh, well, that's work. Oh, well, we'll make the exception. We can pull our child out, or we can get our ox and bring him to the water and food and a few little things like that. They made some exceptions. And Jesus sat there and said, you mean to tell me a son of Abraham or a daughter of Abraham doesn't have more worth than some of these things? So he basically shut them up about their laws. And now they're sitting down to the dinner, and he's just a little more watching them with, I can just hear the gritting of the teeth. Even if it was a breach of etiquette, and everybody's, finally getting back to them, now they're starting to look for their place at the table. I don't know if they came up with the idea of name tags yet. So they're all jockeying positions, and Jesus was watching them and noticed them looking for positions and where they could sit, a seat of honor near there, moving up the social ladder if you can, places at the table. We think we've cured that by having name tags whenever we have a fancy banquet and stuff. But after doing a few weddings now, I've gone through and seeing people look around and look in their seats. There's their name tag. They don't sit down. They wander around and see where everybody else is sitting. And an occasional, they'll pull a swap because I want to sit with these people. Yes, it still happens today, even at a fancy wedding feast. Weddings are something that Jesus used a lot of. Wedding feast, the joy of the family, and it's, he sees Sabbath meals as being the wedding feast to end all wedding feasts. Now, one of the other things about pride, I can't let this one go. I'm watching my time, but there's a story of this man that's having a banquet in his name and honoring him. And the host is listing off all his qualities and things. Oh, he's done this, he's got a PhD in this, and he's done that. And all and on is going on and on. And this man who he's being honored leans down to his wife. I said, I wonder how many other people at this dinner are as prestigious as I am. And his wife said, one less than you think. That's what pride can do to us. Now, I'm thinking of a dinner situation quite a bit different. I kind of alluded to it like at Thanksgiving where there's a separate little card table set up. Yes, we put tablecloths on them. And I think if it were older kids, that we even got our candles too. But how many times does the average family put on a large gathering? We were going to have the kids come over and their spouses. So I say, Joan and me, Ernie, Becky, 2 spouses. Oh, we can do this. Oh, well, Deb and Bill, my brother and sister want to come and bring mom. Oh, well, we're going to have to pull the table apart, stretch it. Bring the plates out. We don't have enough matching plates or enough mugs. You can always tell the church plastic has made it. Everybody gets the same. It's a tougher story now, but everybody had place settings for whatever was, especially newlyweds. You only had a place setting for whatever they sold you at the time, 6 or whatever. So you had different plates, different silverware, different glasses. And did you obsess about it? I hope not, because it's not so much about the being judged by all your settings and your hosting and your decorations and your centerpieces. Did you have a florist bring some flowers, or did you just bring some cut flowers from your garden and put out there? And so that's the way it is. Or are you more concerned about being hospitality to your friends, to your family, the loving, and treating everybody the same, treating everybody like what they are, family? That's what Jesus is trying to tell this host of this banquet. We don't have to be paid back. It reminds me of, I didn't do this wedding, but it was one of my scouts. They get away from you at times, and now they grow up and they get married and they have kids and stuff. But I see him on Facebook now down south, and he's got a family, and he's got a son that looks just like Crazy Eddie, as I remember him at Scouts. But he came home from military, and he was going to be shipped out to Hawaii. And he wanted to get married, because if he was married, when he got there, they would have military barracks. Instead of barracks, he would have quarters for married couples. And he wanted to see that, plus several benefits. He really thought it out. And he told mom and dad, we want to get married in a week. They found a justice of the peace because they couldn't find anybody else. They had it at a community park, a pavilion, set it up. A lot of people brought it. But I can't think of a neater situation. And my gift, I said, oh, what do you give them? He can't, he's military. Gave him a little picture of all the scouts when Crazy Eddie was just in Cub Scouts transferring to Boy Scouts. And there's all this picture. I traced it and just a silhouette, put numbers on it. And we, with the help of Joan and several other leaders, we got names under it. So here's this little 2-page picture frame, one with the photograph and one with a little thing. And that was our gift to them, something small they could bring with them and memories of great times. That's the type of things. Was it any better than maybe a great big banquet? I see all these pictures of banquets, let's say Buckingham Palace and all those things. If you went to, got invited to, let's say Buckingham Palace for a wedding, don't know why or how, but let's say you did. Now, yes, you're going to go into all the, wow, look at this place and look at the china and look at the settings, but you just didn't know what to do. You'd get nervous and all that stuff, and you always would say, but when you, years later, you would tell folks and you'd say, what are you going to remember? You're going to say, it was a great time, but I got to be there with them. It's the relationship and not the material things that you really remember, that really leave an impression with you. Now that meal illustration with the all the different plates and stuff. Are we really concerned about the right things? Jesus was talking about getting all the right people. And actually, he probably wanted all the Pharisees there, powerful Pharisees that could sit there and judge Jesus. And guess what? He made a fool of him and all his little friends around him. And you know why? Here's my time. I love the passage from Jeremiah about the potter. I could have 2 whole sermons on that, but I'm watching. God is the potter. He can choose what he wants for the banquet and what he wants to serve. And if every single cup and plate is different, that's because the potter made it that way. We're all each unique. No one's going to say that your cup looks different than my cup, your plate is different, and so on. The task of making disciples, as Jesus puts it, or more importantly, commands us to it, is to show, I think is shown in this illustration. He says, go and make disciples. Go and tell people about me and about my Father's house. That we're supposed to be distributing these riches that God has evenly, those riches of goodness, grace, and equality. And what did he say? He said, invite the poor, the lame, the blind, and all those other undesirables. And what is that code word for us today? The poor. Well, later on, Jesus said, blessed the poor in spirit. They're downtrodden. The lame. Yes, physically wounded people, handicapped folks, but also the emotionally wounded. They've had enough. They recoiled back into their own house and you don't see them much anymore. And the blind, well, there's a lot of places we can put the blind. Blinded by the light and the sounds of the world versus what Jesus says. If you don't have a biblical worldview to focus through, your filters are going to constantly change with whatever the world and the media and the marketing people say you need. They build it up. You need this, you deserve this, and you don't have that. Fortunately for you, we sell those things. Well, fortunately for all of us, we offer free of charge the grace of God here. It's amazing, though, that the people who need the loving and the humble and serving community the most are the ones that are most often left on the margins. To be Christ followers and to know and help others know Jesus and his message requires us to be able to just move in and out of society's little strata of society and all these different levels. Are you comfortable in high society and low society? As a rule, high society doesn't like the fact that you wander all over the place, and lower folks don't trust you as much. But that's ability to do that, the ability to see things differently. Jesus sat there and watched the crowds. Everybody else was looking at who was attending, where they were sitting, and what they could get out of it. Jesus was looking at their behavior, their hearts, their motivations. Our Christian upbringing helps us see things a little differently, helps us see things as God would see it. Can see need, can see person that needs a hug, any of that stuff that the rest of the world doesn't see. And we don't have to worry about reciprocal treatments and what will we get out of it. If there's one message you can get from this particular gospel about counting, we need to stop counting our position, our places, what we have and we don't have, and our rank on grades, everything is all counting and positioning. In God's kingdom, we can stop counting. We're supposed to share and be giving and inviting. And even though our communion cups may be all the same, the Lord knows that each and every one that takes is different and unique and a loved child of God. It is a simple table compared to some big fancy banquets. But oh, the special effects, the memories, and the joy that can come from it, from a changed heart. You can't put a price tag on that. And so we're being invited, we're being gathered. Set our tables wide. Yeah, I guess they got plastic on those pictures too. You probably wouldn't find a picture of our household's family banquets. But this table is set as wide as the folks want to come in. And the difference is, do you want to be a Pharisee? Or do you want to be one of the guests like that healed man, or like Jesus who came in and could get so much more out of it than they could return. There is so much more that you can get from your relationship with Christ than you could ever give back. Romans says we've all fallen short and deserve death, and yet he paid our price. I picked a little different song for our communion time when we're coming up. It's called a love song. I was hoping to find a little different person to sing it other than the original rock band Third Day, but it's a beautiful song if you listen to the words. And judging by the crowd, you'll get to sit and listen for just a second longer. So if you would, there is one more hymn in between. So we'll, what is that hymn? Oh yes, Gather Us In. That's Faith We Sing, the Little Black Book, 2236. This one you should know.